Today I'm doing a follow-up to my recent video, Design Killer Thumbnails. As you saw in that one, I was using Inkscape, which I don't normally use for my production work. I just wanted to show a popular free program that was available that you could do them in. But today I want to show you the finer points of thumbnail design, what I use to do my normal production work, which is Picta Graphic for Mac OS. This was requested by one of my clients, and I've also had some other users asking about my recent thumbnail work. So I thought this would be a good follow-up. So let's get started. Welcome back. This is Fuzzee Tutorials, and I'm Fuzzee D. All right, so we're doing something a little different here. I'm actually doing the screen recording for this on my MacBook. Everything else is being done on the PC. So hopefully there won't be any sync issues, but I'll apologize ahead of time in case there are. What we're doing today here with Picta Graphic is I'm going to start by showing you where to find it. So it is available on the App Store. And do a search for Picta Graphic, and of course I've already got it installed, so I'm not sure what they're charging for it these days. I believe when I bought it, it was $30 US, which is a pretty good price. It's a one-time fee. There's no ongoing subscription charges. So once you've got it downloaded and installed, then you can set it up. I've got other videos that show you what it's going to look like the first time you run it and what to do with that. So just look on my playlist for Picta Graphic. From this point on, we're going to assume you've got it installed and have gone through some of my basic tutorials on how to use this program. I've got some really low-level beginner stuff, and then I've got 3 masterclass videos that show you more in depth how to use everything. You might want to take a look at those. I'll link those in the description, or at least the first one of them. They're also on that playlist, so you can find them there if you want more information on it. So this particular tutorial, we're going to be covering more in depth on how to make thumbnails. And as an example, we're going to be using one that I did for a client just recently. So here is a JPEG of the final graphic that went up for his YouTube video, and I'm going to show you how to create this. And we're also going to cover some other things that you can do when it comes to thumbnails, but this is kind of the main focus of the project. But we are doing a deep dive on this. You'll really get a chance to kick your thumbnails up a notch. And this program is a lot easier to use than most of the other ones out there, but still very powerful. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is a color palette. Now, for this particular client, we developed a specific color palette. There's going to be another tutorial later where I show you the process I went through to redesign his entire YouTube channel. So I'm not going to get into how we picked these colors and the tools I use to actually generate this color palette, but we will get into that on the other video. But for this one, just know that this is the color palette that we generated to go with. So we'll be using these colors as well as modified versions of these colors. We're just gonna kind of set this out of the way for now, and we're gonna go here and select the correct layer. Now, being that this is a thumbnail for YouTube, we've sized it at 1920 by 1080, which is their standard 16 by 9 1080p. We'll close that toolbox. So we're going to start with a background. So we're just going to draw a rectangle here. And of course, chosen the rectangle tool. And we've got our smart guides are turned on, so it'll automatically snap to the outer edges here. When you see it turning slightly orange, that means it's aligning or snapping. Right now it's just a white box. So we're going to switch to our select tool. And we're going to go up here and choose our effects. And we're going to go to, let's close that, we're going to go to fill, and we're going to switch to gradient, and we'll just pick a kind of a default grayscale one because we're going to adjust it. And we're just going to pop this open by clicking here, so unpack that. And then we'll take our first color well, and let's get our little color palette thing down here. Oh, actually, let me just scroll up to it. So I'm just using the scroll wheel on my mouse. I'm not actually using my trackpad. You can do this stuff with the trackpad. I just find my trackball is a lot easier. Okay, so we make sure our box is selected. And then we're going to take our first color palette here and grab our color picker. Select green. And we'll go over here, color picker again, and we'll take the blue, and that will just hide that. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to double click, and this gives us a really fine control over just how this stuff is going to be laid out. So we can kind of get the angle that we want here. Now you do have some other options that you can do. You can actually grab one of these and pull it towards the center, which changes where the actual gradient is going to happen. Same thing here. You can add more range of colors to work with if you just click in here, and you can add another one. But we're not going to do that here because I haven't found a way yet to delete one once you've added it in. Now we're going to just go back and quickly reference. Got to get it up above. Sorry about that. So we're just going to give a quick reference back. Now you'll notice here I'm actually using a radial gradient. So basically the same gradient, but okay. Select our shape. Change it to radial gradient. And now we can select where that circular center is going to be. And if we want it a little less spread out, make it more obvious, we can do that. So we just fine tune this until we get it the way we want. And if we take a quick look at the reference, now we decided at a later date to intensify those colors. So all we did is we cranked up the saturation. So we're going to select one of these inkwells, and we're going to click on where it says color picker. We're going to pop the list down, and we're going to switch it to HSB sliders. And then we'll open this again. We'll take our saturation, and right now it's set to 33%, and we're going to bump it up to 80%. So it's the same hue, we're just making it more intense. And then click on that again to close it, and we'll do the same thing here. We'll bump up our saturation to 80%. All right. So now we may do a little more fine tuning and adjustment for color placement a little later, but I think that's good for now. Now the next thing we need to do is add a outline or a stroke. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on fill here to pack that back up, and we're going to unpack our stroke, and we're going to set stroke of say 12, and then I'm going to change the position from center to inside. Now we're going to open up our color here, and we're going to change our HSB sliders to RGB sliders because it makes it easier to pick our next color. And we're going to change this to an intense pink. No, actually, we're just going to darken that pink a little bit. A little bit more red tone to it. Just a touch. Okay, now the reason we know that this is actually a pretty good color to work with these other ones is I use a color science tool on a website. You can go and you can give it a color and it'll show you other colors that go with it based on the type of color science you're working with. So whether it's complementary or contrasting or triadic or something like that, you just choose it from a drop down and it'll give you some colors you can use. So this is one of the colors that we settled on. So now I might actually bump up this stroke a little bit more, take it to 15. And now we're going to go up here because we need this to kind of be separate from the background. So we're going to go up here to modify and we're going to go outline stroke. So what that does is it actually turns off the stroke. So you see it's still checked, but it's actually made it transparent. So we're just going to actually uncheck it and put it into a group. So if we open this little group, you'll see we've got a separate shape now. And every once in a while, it kind of resets the color on it. It shouldn't have done. It probably won't on yours, but I've got some hardware issues with my MacBook, so I have to put up with this a little bit sometimes. Make sure we got that selected. And we're going to go, now because it's not a stroke anymore, we're going to go to fill. Change that to color. And just move the slider a tiny bit and it'll bring us that color back. So this is mostly because of a hardware issue on this particular MacBook. You shouldn't have this happen to you using this program. So we'll go back to our regular selection tool. Now it is possible, because it's now a regular fill, you can apply gradients and stuff to this if you want to. We're not going to. It's not really appropriate for thumbnails. Too much detail can't be seen when you get it down to being on a smartphone. Keep everything big and bold. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to take a photo. As you can see in the original, we've got a photo here. Now I've got other tutorials that show you how to actually do this, how to take a photo and pull the background out of it. So I'm not going to go through that in this tutorial. I think I cover this in the Masterclass Chapter 3. So we'll turn that back off. Now I've got a couple of photos already saved for this particular client here. So I'm going to turn on my little shape library and take our client pics. So now I can take this and just drag it into my project. And we can position it where we like. And I'll make sure I use the Shift key as we expand this. And we'll actually bring it right up to the top. And then we're going to position it more like so. It's going to overlap the bottom here. Now you've got a choice. You can have it above the box outline, and some people do that. It's kind of become trendy lately. I know I kind of do a variation of that on some of my thumbnails, where I'll have it over top at the bottom, but I'll have my head go over top of it at the top of it. But we're not doing that with this one. So now we're going to get rid of this here. So I'm going to take this shape here and I'm going to move it above in our layer. Now there are other ways of doing this. You could also go to the Arrange menu and you can bring to front or send backward a step, that kind of thing. I just find it easier to manage it here. It's especially handy when you've got groups with literally scores of items in them. It's much easier to handle it this way. So I'm just in the habit of doing that. Now we don't need to have that group anymore, so we're just going to pull this out of the group and get rid of that. On this picture, I'm going to change our stroke from the purple to just plain black, because we're not using this as a big visible stroke. If I turn it off, you'll see that when I cut this out, there were tiny bits of white space that I missed. So I'm just kind of using this to hide my sins, so to speak. And we've got our position set to center, and then our width is 3. So it just kind of cleans up that outer edge a little bit. And then we're going to take a drop shadow, and we're going to actually set them both to 0. Because we're not looking for a normal drop shadow that's off to one side. And we're just going to crank up our size. So it kind of gives us this little bit of separation, a shadow separation all the way around it. So we would just want to create a shadow separation around the whole thing without being directional. So let's go back to our reference here for a second. And it looks like we're pretty close. So now we're going to add our text. Oh, 100 videos. And we'll go up here to our appearance box, and we're going to choose text. And we're going to change the actual font. And we're going to change it to Bangers. Now this is the font that our client Adam chose. I'm just going to expand this box a little bit so that it's got some room to expand. And we're going to go and set our point size to 250. Oh, got to give it a little more room. Okay. Okay, now we're going to make our text color white. So we're going to go back to our effects tab. And set that to white. Now we're going to set our stroke. And we're going to use our color picker to select our pink. And we're going to bump it up a bit. And we're going to set it to outside. Now you notice the letters are a little crowded. And if that's the look you're going for, that's perfectly fine. But that's not the look that I want. So I'm going to go back to text. And this little box right here changes our letter spacing. I'm going to actually set this to 20. We'll see what that looks like. So a little more room here. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to check my reference again real quick. Yeah, I think we're pretty good. I think the one thing I did a little differently on that was I went back to a little more intense pink just to differentiate it from the outline of the box. Okay. Now we're just going to move this up a little bit. We're going to be adding more stuff behind it, of course. But for now, I just want to duplicate this a couple times. Just because it's simpler to do it this way. And And I can't remember what the text is supposed to be. So, okay, lessons learned. All right. So we just double click on the text and then we select that. And lessons. And we can double click on this one. Now we're just going to take the bottom here and we're going to move it up until the text changes color. And that's just so that we're setting it to be no bigger than it needs to be. It can make selecting stuff a little easier that way. Okay, we'll just change the alignment a little bit here. Okay, so now for the next thing, we're going to take and draw a rectangle. And it's going to go over top of this box, but that's fine because we're going to change it. Now we're going to go up here, change to our selector tool, and get rid of the stroke. And I'm going to reference back what I used for color. Okay, so we used basically a cyan color. Change our color. Okay, so now you'll notice on the original it's got a kind of a uneven outline around that box. I'm going to show you how to do that. I don't actually have the right shade of blue here, so let me just change this a little bit, get a little closer. I think that's close enough. Now we're going to go up to plugins. And I'm going to go to path, and I'm going to go crumple path. So we've got how big of a crumple we want to do, and then how many sections it's going to break it into. So let's make it a little stronger. Let's try, say, 15, and we'll give it 10 segments, and we'll see what that looks like. Doesn't have to be identical to what we did before. Okay, it's not too bad. I think I want to make it a little bit stronger, so we're just gonna undo that. Command Z. So we're gonna change this to 12 and 10. Actually, let's make that a little stronger. Let's try 18 and 10. That's not too bad. I don't want to play with it too much, but you can play with that until you get it just the way you want it. And if you want more segments, you can just type that in instead of using the slider. You can type in a bigger number. So now we're going to take that shape and we're going to move it down our list and our layer panel here so that it's going to be under everything. And then we can use Command D and we'll just make a couple of copies of it. Oh, and I grabbed the text. Okay, so we're going to grab the shape over here on our panel control. And then I'm going to nudge it down. So I'm just going to use Shift down arrow. And we'll just nudge it. And once we've got it down there and it's still selected, we can then resize it. And then we'll grab another one and we'll nudge that one down. And we'll resize that. Now I do believe we had some drop shadows on there. Yep, and we did on the text as well. Okay. So I'm going to take and select all 3 of these shapes on the layer panel. I'm going to open up drop shadow, and I'm going to set this to 10 by 15, and then we're going to change our size or blur so we kind of get it the way we want it. I might make these a little smaller. Let's make this one 8 and this one 10. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Let's just mess with the size a little bit more. Yeah, I think 20 is going to be a pretty good number. Now we could take this text and convert it to curves, but if we want to use this as a template, you want to leave it as text, because then it's easy to edit. If we change it to curves, then it makes each individual character of the text a separate shape, and then we got to group it together. So for some things and effects, you want to do that. For instance, you can't outline a stroke if it's a stroke on text, but you can if you've converted it to a shape. So just something to be aware of. So now what I want to do is I want to take these shapes and line them up with the background they're on top of. So this one is for learned, so we're going to stick that under learned, and then we're going to select both of these, and then we're going to group them. So we'll just go Command G, and then I'll change the label. All I did there was double click on it. Now we'll take our next shape and we'll put it under the word lessons. And then we'll turn that into a group. Or I think I actually named them line 1, line 2, and line 3, but just use whatever works for you. And then we've got our last set that we can group. And this just makes it easier going forward if you're using this as a template. Better to stay as organized as you can. And then I'm just going to change their order so that they're in the same order they appear on the page. Just a little easier to stay organized that way. Okay, so now we're going to open that group, and then I can select the text itself. Now we can go add a drop shadow, pop that open. I don't actually have to turn on the checkbox. As soon as I make a change, it'll check it. So we're going to go 4 and 5. Add a little bit of size. And then we're just going to nudge it up a little bit. And now I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to go copy style from the drop down. And then I can take these other ones and just paste style. And we'll do the same on the last one. Okay, so now if we actually click over here, when we click on that, it selects the whole group, which is one of the reasons we want to group it. So we're just going to nudge this up a bit. And if you don't use your shift key, you can nudge it just a little tiny bit at a time, like 1 pixel. And the super nudge with the shift key moves it 10 pixels at a time. And we'll grab this one and we'll move it down a bit. And we'll stick this somewhere in the middle. Now there is a tool you can use to distribute, but it gets a little funky when you're trying to distribute text when it's still as text, because it works on the entire selection area of the text rather than the real text itself. So it can give you some unexpected results, which is why I adjust this manually. I think we got that where we want it. Now the last thing we need to add here is our YouTube graphic. So open my shape library again and go back to my designs, and we'll just scroll down and we'll grab our YouTube logo that I recreated, and we'll close the shape library. And we're gonna make sure we hold our shift key down as we increase the size here. And then we're going to drag that down under everything else. Oh, one more. There we go. And we're just going to nudge it over a bit more. Get our little YouTube play thing in the middle between the text and the photo. And then we're going to pop open the group. Select the bottom shape, and we're going to create a drop shadow for that. So we're going to go 5 and 6. And give it a little blur there. And I'm just going to check my reference. I think I actually had it a little bit smaller than that. Yes, a little bit smaller. Okay, so I'm going to go back to selecting the group itself, so that when I change the size, it changes them both together. And we're just going to resize that a little bit. A little bit more. Okay. So that shadow effect is kind of wasted if you can't see it. So that's why I'm making these final adjustments here. Okay. Now I found that that red was a little bright, and I didn't like how it was mixing with the other colors. So we're just going to change the fill, and we're just going to darken it a slight bit, so it's not quite so loud. Okay, so now we've created it, and we're going to save it. So we're going to go Command S, or you can go up to File and then Save. And now we're going to export it. So once again, you can come up here and you can go to Export, or you can go Command Option E. Okay, and for YouTube thumbnails, you'll want to use JPEG. If you use PNG, it creates an issue if you want to share it on other platforms. For instance, Facebook will usually strip out the thumbnail and won't give you any thumbnail at all when you go to share the video on Facebook. So make sure that you use JPEG. But to get maximum readability, I always change it to 97%. So it's virtually indistinguishable from a PNG as far as quality goes. And then we'll make sure we've got entire canvas as our include, and we'll just hit save. And make sure it's in the right spot, and we'll save it. And that's it. That's how we created the thumbnail for this client. Many of you know who this is. This is Adam Meller. His channel, the Adam Meller channel. So now I'm going to show you a couple other kind of different things that you can do. We can go to our shape down here, which is our main background thing. And we do have some different options you can do with this. So if we go to our fill, and we open that up and go to pattern, you can see I have a ton of patterns. Now this program does not come with all these patterns. It comes with just these first few up to about here, I think. So these first couple of rows. All the rest are ones that I've created. And I do show you how to do that on one of my other tutorials, but it's kind of outside the scope of this one. But we can take one of these patterns and we can fill that box with those patterns. So this is a pattern that I particularly like. But we've got lots of other ones. You know, if you were doing something for, say, a landscape company, you could take one of these brick patterns, a sidewalk brick. And then you can actually scale it, so you can make these bigger. Like so. You can change their opacity, so it's not quite so loud. And you can even change the angle. So if we wanted it like that. So there's all kinds of things that you can do for filling your backgrounds. Now a lot of this kind of detail tends to get lost when people are viewing thumbnails on a smartphone. So that's why we don't actually do it that way. We're just going to undo all that. Now something else that you can do, I'm going to take one of the letters here, lines of text, and we're going to duplicate it. And I'm just going to pull it down off the bottom here. Let's scroll up a little bit. So there's some interesting things that you can do if you want to get a little fancier with your stroke. So we can actually come up to our appearance panel here, and we can right click and we can go add stroke. So now let's take this and increase the size a little bit. So you can actually have two strokes. So right now it's set to center. We could set that to outside. Or we can go back to center. We can take the other stroke and set it to center. And then we get something like that. So if we increase the size on that a little bit, like so. So there's all kinds of different effects you can do with this. So we'll go back to outside. And this one outside. So it's just, you can play with this stuff, get the effects that you're looking for. We could also take this pink one and we can really jump up the size and get something more like that. That's something that's pretty popular in some circles. But something else we can do is we can add a outer glow. So if we want to take our color picker and select our bright pink, then we can turn this into kind of a neon glow type of idea. And you can actually add as many multiples of these as you want. It's one of the things I love about this program. It's so simple to do this stuff. If you enjoy our videos and find them useful, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Please share this video with your friends and make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.